supposed to be
Here with
looking at
former
that?
Yankee, Pirate also, Brian Boehringer. You know, you're here for youth athletics. You were born in St. Louis, Missouri. How did you fall in love with the game of baseball, and how do you think that differs? How old are you right now? If you don't mind me
I'm
asking.
43.
43. So obviously generations have changed. I'm 52. The way I was exposed to the game, the way you were exposed to the game is different than today. You know, what was it about the game that made you love it?
My dad always loved it, number one, and it was just always, he was always watching it with me, and we were always talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. And I think that always brought out the love of baseball in me. And then being able to go in the backyard with him and play catch and have him hit the ball to me and have him pitch to me, it was just always a big bond we had. And I just think that was more bonding with my father almost than playing baseball, even though I love the game so much. It was just like a love of both. Being able to combine both and be able to just keep doing it throughout my life was just a blessing.
It was interesting. Growing up a Cardinal fan, your first major league team being the Yankees. How did that go with your dad?
Believe it or not, my father's always been one of the guys who always saw them as the evil empire, never really liked the Yankees, but he always appreciated them, but it was one of those things where you're always jealous of them because of how successful they've been over the years. And he came to a realization because of me always having to pound it in his head that, hey, these guys just go out and play baseball the way it's supposed to be. Especially, you know, when I came up with Pettit, Posada, Mariano, and Jeter, and just being with that group of guys coming up, you know, I just had to keep explaining to them, hey, these guys are great, they're great for the game, and they play the game right, and you should appreciate what they do more than anything.
The fact that you came up with Derek and you look what he accomplished this season, you know, when you see that, you know, what type of athlete does it take to maintain that level of excellence, that level of leadership, especially in the New York market on top of it with all the other distractions?
What Derek Jeter's done in his career is just amazing to me. From the day I saw him step on the field with me in Double A, I knew he was something special. Now that I know he'd achieved these heights, no, not necessarily, but I just knew he's always been something special. He's been a pleasure to watch mature because, like I said, I came up from Double A, Triple A into the big leagues with him. And it was just a pleasure to watch the way he's handled himself throughout the years, the way he's taken care of himself, and the way he's approached the game. It's the way he approaches the game every day, every game, every at-bat, every pitch. It's just amazing to me, and I could never wish him nothing more than the best.
And compare stepping on the mound at Yankee Stadium as opposed to Busch Stadium for you, which was a bigger thrill?
The mound in Yankee Stadium, I was floating more than I was pitching on it. It just seemed like it was a culmination of actually pitching in Yankee Stadium and pitching in the big leagues all in one, and I felt like I was floating on the mound. Whereas Busch Stadium, I didn't finally get to pitch there until my third year in the big leagues, so I wouldn't say established, but I wasn't wet behind the ears anymore. And when I got to Busch Stadium, it was just kind of another ho-hum atmosphere to me. You know, Busch Stadium doesn't have near the allure that the old Yankee Stadium did. And to me, it was just night and day. And when I try to explain that to people who've never been to the old Yankee Stadium will never understand how that stadium actually was.
Now, for me, you know, I'm a fan of the game. You know, cover the game, but still, when you walk into old Yankee Stadium, whether you're a player or a fan, all that history comes in. As a player, when you get to be in a locker room that DiMaggio, Mantle, you know, Babe Ruth, Gehrig, all those guys are part of that history. Does that sense of history, I mean, like when you guys are sitting here, does that ever come up in the locker room? Do you guys ever talk about that?
It definitely did for me because I've always been a historian of the game. And it's funny that you mentioned all those names, and one person you didn't mention was Thurman Munson. And that's the first person I thought of every time I walked into that locker room because you had the empty locker with his catcher's gear in it. And saying that and then walking into the stadium on top of that, out of the clubhouse and into the stadium. First day I was there, I just went out and I sat on that dugout bench for a good hour and a half, and I was just, it was just, you could hear every sound, it seemed like the groundskeepers were out there raking the grass, and it just sounded like it was right next to me, and they were, you know, a good 150 feet away from me, and just like that, it's like they always say, you can hear the ghosts in there. And that's how that was. That was the feeling that I got, because it just seemed like I could hear everything that was going on in that stadium, and it just brought back Babe Ruth was here, Ty Cobb played here at one time, just all the names that just came flooding back into my head. It was just an amazing, amazing feeling to just sit on that dugout bench.
Well, carry that one step further. I mean, Bob Shepard was alive when you played there. When you came into a game and he announced your name, did you, I mean, obviously pitchers are trained to tune everything out. They don't hear the crowd noise. But did you ever hear, like, Bob Shepard announce your name, and what went through your mind?
Well, I don't know if he had the same protocol for every player, but he came up to me before my first game, and he wanted to get the pronunciation of my word proper, my last name proper. And so I sat there with him for almost like 4 or 5 minutes talking to him, and the voice just echoing. We were standing in the hallway. It just seemed to echo around me, and it almost made me shake a little bit. It was just amazing. But then coming in from the bullpen, you know, you hear it running in, so it's not as, you're not as awestruck as you could be, but I remember hearing it. It just seemed to echo, like when you hear the Lou Gehrig speech, and it echoes. That's how that just seemed. It seemed like an echo when I was running into like an abyss. It was just an amazing feeling that you can never. I can sit here and talk to you all day about it, but you just can never explain that feeling.
And was Pete Sheehy still there when you were there? Did you get to speak to him about, like, some of the old stuff?
No, I didn't, but fortunate enough, Nick Peoria was there, and him and I spoke quite a bit about Pete, and just hearing how Pete would talk. He told me all stories about Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth, and you don't get those stories with a lot of organizations. You know, there are some that have history, but nobody has the history like the Yankees. And it was a shame to see that stadium go down, but you know, it was well in the making, and I believe that they redid the new stadium in a very good light, and I believe that that they'll carry on that tradition throughout the years with that new stadium.
And lastly, biggest thrill for you in Major League career?
It was actually playing against the Yankees, and they always ask me about this, and I always said used to say the '96 World Series when we won it. But looking back on it, the '98 World Series when we lost to the Yankees, we're in Jack Murphy Stadium, and you know that was a football stadium, and it held over 60,000 people. And Yankees get the final out to sweep the series, and we just watched them. I was down the bullpen on the left field line, and we just sat there and watched the Yankees, and I had like a joy for them, because I understood. I had played with most of those guys because I had just been traded the year before, and so I wasn't, I was just kind of numb, but I was enjoying the moment because I was happy for the guys I had played with. So we let them celebrate for about 5-10 minutes on the field, and all of a sudden they left the field, so our bullpen gathered up all their stuff, and we start walking. And all of a sudden 65,000 people just came to their feet and cheered, because they were giving us like our final, I guess our last will and testament almost, because the season was over. But it was just a joy. It was the best feeling to have them people stand up and acknowledge the accomplishment we had, even though we hadn't won the World Series. We gave them quite a ride, and it was enjoyable. And the same thing kind of happened in Oakland this year, and it was kind of brought back memories to me. And it's just those things that stick with you, and you always get a feeling inside anytime you talk about them.
Excellent, thanks.